Hi, this is Kris Kimball. I'm with Legacy Tours and Travel, and I'm here with Rod Meldrum, the Book of Mormon evidence guy, and we're having a conversation about a tour that we're going on together in October of 2025, and it's a tour that is very unique. There's not one other company that is offering this type of an itinerary that goes to Tunisia, Malta, and southern Italy. And I've had a lot of people who are excited about the tour, but they're asking me, Kris, what does Tunisia have to do with Book of Mormon, the Book of Mormon evidence guy? Why is that? Why are we going there, Rod?
Yeah, it's kind of funny. As I've talked to different people, the first question is where's Tunisia?
Right. Yes.
I've heard of it, but I don't know where it is. So just to kind of mentally put where Tunisia is. Most people know, we know the Mediterranean. We know that Italy sticks out in the Mediterranean like a boot.
Mm-hmm.
And the toes of the boot of Italy point directly to Tunisia. And so Tunisia is the northern coast, basically, it's northern Africa, and it's just west of Egypt. So Egypt is kind of on the east side of North Africa, and then this is kind of in the middle of North Africa. And there's some islands in between, which is one of the reasons why we're going to be going there. It's called Malta. And I think you're going to tell us a little bit more about that in a minute.
Mm-hmm.
But let me just kind of tell you, people go, okay, so Rod, what are you doing going to Northern Africa for a Book of Mormon thing?
Right.
Right?
It's a great question.
And the answer to that actually has to do with some really fascinating things that happened with the ship called the Phoenicia. And this is a replica of the ship. It was actually built by Captain Philip Beale. And it was based after a 600 BC ship that was dug up out of the Mediterranean Sea called the Jules Verne 7, actually on display in France in a museum there.
Where? In Paris or do we know?
No, it's in it's a French word, so I don't remember exactly.
Is it on the coast, Marseille, or?
I think it is in Marseille, actually.
Okay, that's on the
Marseille,
coast.
France.
Yeah,
Yes,
Marseille.
that's exactly where it is. And anyway, so they found this portion of these Phoenician ships, so they know exactly what they were made out of, the kind of wood they were using, the kind of joinery that they used, the size of the ships, and so forth. Why does that have anything to do with anything in the Book of Mormon? Well, because we know that there's basically three different voyages of the Book of Mormon. There was the Jaredite voyage, there was the Nephite voyage, there was also the Mulekite voyage. Somehow the Mulekites had to get, Mulek was a son of Zedekiah. Of course, Zedekiah being the king of Israel at the time of the initiation of the Book of Mormon in Lehi's time frame. Right. So it's about 600 BC. And yet Mulek is never mentioned in any of the historical accounts of the sons of Zedekiah. We know their names and so forth. We know a lot about them. But this Mulek is people say, well, the Book of Mormon was made up because there's no mention of Mulek anywhere, but the Book of Mormon. Mm-hmm. So where do these Mulekites come from? How did they get here? Who was that little king? That Mulek actually means little king. And it turns out that there's some really fascinating potential connections. When we were working with the Phoenicia expedition and Mike and Betty LaFontaine, they were able to actually obtain the ship, purchase the ship from Philip Beale after he did two voyages that did two of the ancient
the sea routes.
Sea routes, yeah. This ship has done two of the three voyages of the Book of Mormon. The Lehi one from Saudi Arabia all the way to America. They did that voyage first, and then they did the Mulekite voyage, leaving from, guess where? Carthage, Tunisia.
That's where the Mulekite voyage would have taken off.
Would have started there, and unlike, the Mulekites, they never mentioned how they had to build a ship and they had to do this and do that like Lehi does. Now maybe just we don't have that information from their history, but they may not have needed to build ships because there were people who were already there in the Mediterranean building these ships at 600 BC, around the same time as Lehi, and all of a sudden there's this outflow from Israel across that part of the Mediterranean over to Tunisia. Mm-hmm. and specifically on this isle that we're going to go to. The island's called Jerba.
Yeah, there would have been refugees leaving Jerusalem because the Babylonians would have come in.
I think some people actually believe Lehi when he was telling them that they're about to be destroyed.
Right, right. And so, yes, he had a few that
that may
decided to
have.
pay attention,
Yep.
right? But it's interesting because
Yes.
Carthage is a huge ancient seaport that was one of the main cities used by
Yeah.
the Phoenicians.
And the Romans.
Between that and
Yeah, later.
later, but between
Yeah.
Tyre, is it Tyre?
Tyre and Sidon.
Tyre,
Yeah.
up in the
Lebanon.
Lebanon region, and then between Carthage. And so that's a huge, huge seaport. And we are so disconnected from that. We don't realize that that
How
was
big
a
of a deal it
really
was, yeah.
big central point of naval transportation out
Yep.
into the sea, and who
Yep.
knows where, they get into the trade winds, and all of a sudden they are over into North
Yep.
America,
Yep.
right?
And the Tunisians have a really fascinating history about this island of Jerba. According to their history, and we just met with them the beginning of last year in 2024, with the ambassador of Tunisia actually at their residence in Washington D.C., because the Tunisians believe that because of their connection with the Phoenicians, being the Phoenician connection there and having a big port there at Carthage and then also there at Jerba, that they want their place in history of being one of the first discoverers of America.
Wow, that's interesting.
Now, Tunisia is really fascinating because it was one of the first countries to actually, I don't know if you knew this, Kris, or not, but I didn't know this until we went and met with the ambassador, but Tunisia was one of the first countries to recognize the fledgling United States when we declared our independence.
Oh. Okay.
They basically were one of the first countries to say, hey, okay, we recognize you as a sovereign nation. Now you're not part of France or England or whatever,
Britain,
or Spain.
right.
You are now a separate country. And they have been supportive of the United States since the very beginning. But the interesting thing for me as a Book of Mormon guy has to do with their tradition of these Levite priests coming from Israel, right around the same time as Lehi leaves Jerusalem and heads down along the Saudi Arabian coastline there. He basically, there's these Levite priests that show up on this island called Jerba, and they build the first, and then what is today the oldest synagogue outside of Jerusalem itself.
Wow. Well, we have to look at these traditions because
they bring this princess too.
Yes, a prince.
Yes.
A prince or princess?
It was a princess.
A princess.
There
Okay.
may have been a prince also with her, but from what their tradition is they had this princess that came, and now this goes into some speculation here, okay, but it's kind of a cool speculation when you consider that one of the reasons why Mulek is not mentioned as one of the sons of Zedekiah is because he may not have been born yet. He may have been in vitro at the time, and his mother may have carried on. It's possible that Zedekiah could have had his wife basically placed on a Phoenician ship as these Levites were leaving as well, and took her over to the island of Jerba, started the first synagogue there. Later on, she had the child, and then later on, did the Phoenicians have the capacity to make it to America? And the answer to that has been absolutely and definitively shown. Yes, they did. The Phoenician ship actually, after having done the voyage of Lehi, we actually were able to get Captain Philip Beale to do another voyage, leaving from Carthage, going through the Canary Islands, and then literally came to Florida. And the ship was there in Florida for a number of years. Today, the ship is actually located in Montrose, Iowa, across the river from
right here,
Nauvoo, in a place called Zarahemla.
Right here in the heartland
right
of America. Wow.
And it's just fascinating because that's where the Mulekites showed up.
So you can see a replica of an ancient Phoenician ship right here in the United States.
Yes. But we're going to go actually see where the Phoenician ports were. We're going to be going to some place. So let's, Kris, let's just tell them a little about some of the itinerary.
Well, you mentioned
this is
Jerba.
so exciting.
And Jerba is pretty amazing because
Yeah.
it has been declared in 2023 a World Heritage Site by
A
UNESCO.
UNESCO site, yes.
And you can't be a run-of-the-mill historical site. You have to be a world-class
Well, like, for example,
historical
the Great
site.
Wall of China,
Right.
the Taj Mahal,
Mhm.
the Great Pyramids of Giza. These are all World Heritage UNESCO sites, which, by the way, was kind of fun because just in the last year or two, there's been a couple of new UNESCO sites here in the heartland of America. The Serpent Mound
Yeah.
and Fort Ancient were both declared as UNESCO
And
sites.
they're usually sites that are, in fact, like in France, we were just at Carcassonne,
Mhm.
and they're usually sites that are the best preserved in the world to
Yeah.
display, to learn, to see that type of history
Yep.
in person. And so, Jerba, we are going to visit the
And that's
synagogue.
just one of two
Right.
sites that are
Yeah.
UNESCO sites that we're going to
So
see on this tour.
you have that synagogue that is tied into that tradition that you were just explaining about with the Levite priests. And
Yeah.
we have to have a place when you've got carnage going on in the old world, which is in Judea, the southern kingdom,
Mhm.
they have to go somewhere. And so many of them go
They
into
disperse.
the northern part of Africa
Yeah.
for safety. And so
Yeah.
that's going to be one of the sites, as well as the El Gem Amphitheater. We're going to be seeing
Oh,
that.
yeah.
Another UNESCO site,
Site.
World Heritage Site. So two of them in this one
And
country.
that's an ancient Roman, not a Colosseum, but an
An
amphitheater.
amphitheater,
Yeah.
right. And so it is one of the best preserved in all of Africa, is right there, that we'll be able to visit. We also, as well as visiting Carthage, which is now modern Tunis, but we will go to Sidi Bou Said, which is a port city
Mhm.
where it's beautiful. The ocean and all of the houses are painted white with the blue door and stucco
That's so
motif
beautiful. Yeah.
that's called the Blue White City. Anyway, we're having a chance to go to that.
Oh, yeah.
And
I got to break in for just a second because Kris and I have had the opportunity. I mean, Kris, we've been to Egypt
Mhm.
and all up and down the Nile and so forth
Yeah,
together. We've been to Italy and so forth. We've been on the
Israel,
tours to Israel. We've been to, on the Heartland tours with our
Heartland,
Book of
yeah.
Mormon stuff. And there's a couple of places here that neither you or I have ever gone
Yeah.
before, but there's a couple places that we both have been before. I mean, because we're just a little west of when we've gone to Egypt, because this is just the
Right.
west of Egypt is where Tunisia is located. But I'm excited about this because I feel like it's kind of a tour of discovery.
Exactly.
It's something that neither you or I we haven't been to some of these sites, so we're going to be going with a group of people who hopefully are like us and want to go and
Mhm.
explore. We're going to be able to ask questions to the people who were there and get hopefully some answers to some
Answers
things
to
that
pieces
we
of
don't know
history,
yet.
right. Pieces of history that are kind of missing, puzzles, so to speak. I always talk about we're trying to put that puzzle together of what our historical background was.
Yeah.
And sometimes it takes going to these sites. And when you can learn a local tradition, and we can't discard traditions because so many of them are kept word of mouth, but they're finding that many of them are very valid. And it's the only way that stories were and histories were maintained was word of mouth through these traditions. And this is a great way for us to maybe find some uh, discoveries as to why Mulek doesn't show up in the Old
Yeah.
Testament.
I don't know if I've told you this before, but it goes right along with what you just said. And literally when you say word of mouth,
Mm-hmm.
when the Phoenicia expedition left Carthage and came across the Atlantic Ocean and landed in Florida, there was a couple of Native American friends of mine. That's Mike and Betty Red Ant LaFontaine were there to greet the Phoenician ship as it came into port in
Wow.
Florida.
How cool.
And I'll never forget because Betty Red Ant, she is Navajo. And when the ship came into port, she heard a sound that just almost just made her hair stand up on end. on her arms. She was just like,
Mm-hmm.
and the sound was this sound, and it's called the Lulu.
Hmm.
Have you ever heard of the Lulu? You know what I'm
I
talking about?
no, I don't
It's
think so.
in old Hollywood movies, they had
Mm-hmm.
the Native Americans, the Indians, they always be going,
Oh, Lulu. Oh,
right, kind of thing,
right,
right?
right.
Which is so stupid. It's so Hollywood because
Yeah.
why would they do that? I mean, that sound though is something that Native Americans do. And she remembered from her childhood when somebody would have a baby, would have a child, when the child would come
They
out
would.
and they would kind of present the baby as okay, the baby's all right. There was kind of a celebratory sound that they made, and the sound is basically, and they kind of cover their mouth, but they didn't pound on it. They actually would just go kind of like this,
Yeah.
but
Right.
in a woman's voice, though. I mean,
Yes.
so
Yeah.
getting a little bit higher. That sound was coming from the ship and people who were on the shore.
Wow.
They said, "What is going on with this?" And it turns out when we had our meeting with the ambassador of Tunisia at their
Mm-hmm.
at their residence there in Washington D.C. It's a big, beautiful home and so forth. And we had Arish, who is from Tunisia, and the ambassador of Tunisia, along with here is Betty Red Ant, who is a Navajo, and they did the Lulu, that sound, together, and it was just fascinating. The two completely different
Yeah.
cultures, one from America, ancient America, and
The
one
ancient
from the
Indians.
ancient
Yeah. So,
Mediterranean, and they had that same word of mouth, just like you just
did
said.
they explain why they used that
It's a Hebrew
signal
thing. It's
when they
totally
came to the
Hebrew.
land? So when they
Yes,
come to the land, when they see land, or when they're ready to dock, they
it's a
it's a
celebration.
celebration.
Yeah.
Okay, the voyage is over. We've reached our destination.
When there's a new child is born,
Yes.
that's a celebration.
Right.
And so they
Okay.
make that sound. That Lulu sound is so unique, though. I mean, where else do you
Yeah.
hear that
Right.
kind of a sound? But here it was.
Celebrating.
And here we have the ambassador of Tunisia and this Navajo,
But you realize
pure Navajo,
yeah, but
making the same sound.
where is this? The Navajo has this background that takes them back to the Hebrew.
Yeah,
And the Hebrew are in that Mediterranean area.
that's right.
So it's not that far-fetched really to see that
I just think
overlap.
it's fascinating to see some of the kind of the Hebrew cultural things that are just get handed down, and nobody knows
Yes.
really why. It's just what they do.
Oh, when the Cherokee, when you
Yeah.
go up to when I went to the cemetery at where Custard's last stand
Christmas
is,
last stand, yeah,
okay?
yeah.
And we go and we drive past this headstone, and the Cherokee are putting rocks on top of the headstone. And I'm taking pictures going, okay, this is what they do in Jerusalem, because they
Yes.
don't do flowers, they do rocks on the headstones, because the rocks
Yeah,
are,
that whole cemetery that's covered by
yes.
the whole
And I thought,
Garden of Gethsemane, just above that, the cemetery
yes.
that's above there, just little
So you
pebbles.
have this tradition that carried over into our
Yeah.
the ancient
And I've talked about
Americans.
how the fringes on the garment, is something that God
Yeah.
basically told the Hebrews that they were to have a fringe on their garment for throughout all of their days. And so you have the tallits and you have all the fringes on the garment.
Mhm.
You have a little fringe on your
I do.
your thing
I've
there.
got
See
my
that? Your
fringe
fringe right
here
there.
today. Yeah.
See that? But Native American garb, basically their dress has the fringe on it. And why?
Mm-hmm.
I thought for a long time it was
Yeah.
because of well, it makes it easier so you can sneak up on animals when you're hunting and whatever, kind of camouflages you a little bit better. But actually, it's a throwback to their Hebrew heritage and
The Hebrew
ancestry.
heritage, yeah.
But hey, listen, but we've got
Yeah,
some
we
really cool
just
stuff.
kind of did a deep dive on Tunisia, but Malta.
So, talk to me about Malta, because I haven't been there. You have.
I have not been to
You
Malta.
haven't been there. Wait,
no.
I thought you said you
I
were
just
there.
no. I
Okay.
actually
Okay.
had plans to go there, but they fell through when Anyway,
Well, it's
they
getting
just fell
there's
through.
going to be less and less places on the earth that you
Yeah.
haven't been. You and Jonathan
But,
Neville have been
yeah.
everywhere.
So Malta is just this little island off the coast of Italy in the Mediterranean, and it's its own country.
Yeah,
Okay, it's its own sovereign state.
which is like it's like a postage stamp. It's like Rhode Island or something
Yeah,
size. I mean, it's
but
just a
there's
tiny
some
little place.
amazing history attached to it. And what's really significant is the idea that it's on a ley line, the Apollo ley line that
Yeah.
comes all the way through Europe.
Explain the ley line.
Well, a
So
ley
people
line
may
is
not know that is.
there's electromagnetic energy that is in the earth.
Mhm.
Okay, and it's a lot of sacred sites are
Have
placed
alignments.
on those electromagnetic sites. So a ley line is when you have a series of either man-made sites or natural phenomenon like an island or a stream or
A canyon.
a canyon.
Like
Yeah,
that,
there's just a natural type of formation that can be on that. And when you have several of them in a row, 5 or 6, and they can spread through, there's the
Like
Rose
all the way
line
from like
goes from Roslin all the way down to into Portugal. That's 900 miles. But the Apollo line goes through the Mediterranean and attaches into Europe. But it's this electromagnetic. This is electromagnetic energy that's sitting there. So Malta is sitting on that, the island itself. And so one has to ask, why are all these ancient, whether it's the Giza Pyramid, whether it's Stonehenge, whether it's Karnak, whether it's the Salt Lake Temple,
Carthage.
why are they on this
These
ley
lines.
line?
Yeah.
Okay. And it's because anciently they had an understanding that if you are sitting on this magnetic energy, you're going to have you're going to have more electrical energy that will connect you to the heavens. And so that's the whole point of sacred sites, is connecting us to the heavens. That's why we have temples. What are temples there for? To connect us to heaven,
It's like a
right?
big antenna.
Yes, exactly. And so when you get an intersection of ley lines or electromagnetic lines where you have that becomes a nexus point because you've got extra
Where they intersect.
and where they intersect, which I would say easily could be like the sacred grove. That's going to be a nexus point because we have a place where Heavenly Father and Jesus Christ came to visit Joseph Smith, right?
Yeah.
And so those are sites that are all over the globe, okay? And so anciently, people were more connected to energy. They didn't have rubber-soled shoes walking around. I mean, a lot of
They literally
times
feel it through their feet.
in our modern world, we won't even attach to the earth.
Yeah, we're insulated from
We're
it.
insulated from the earth. And so if you're becoming void of earth energy, you don't know how to feel it. You don't know how to feel it's stronger over here. There's something I'm feeling more over here than over here. Do you see what I'm saying?
It also had, I mean, like water dowsing. You know,
Exactly.
Dowsers will hold like brass rods or even a stick.
I travel with my rods everywhere I go.
And it's interesting how that works. In fact, this is something that they call them the rods back in those days.
Nothing to do with you, right?
But basically, they actually there was a mention even in the original Doctrine and Covenants about the use of the rods.
Yes,
To be able
they're
to
ancient tools.
to show the way.
Yes, the ancient prophets used their
Dowsing rods,
staff.
basically,
They had tools. They had instruments that could help them connect to energy, and we have that in our earth. It's just that our modern world gets kind of pushed away from it, so to speak, because we have our buildings and cars and we don't feel it. And that's why a lot of times we need, I mean, that hertz that comes off the earth energy is so healing. And if people even just took 30 minutes and went outside.
They talk about grounding.
Exactly. It's a grounding energy.
There's a whole genre of products and so forth that help to ground you. So you
get you attached to that natural
energies,
hertz. Yeah, that 7 hertz. So anyway, Malta is sitting in the middle of the Mediterranean, and you have some interesting history because for some reason God has Paul shipwrecked
Right
on
there
Malta.
on Malta.
Okay,
Yeah.
and so we're going to visit, the St. Paul's Cathedral. We're going to visit the grotto that is a traditional site of where Paul would have stayed. But why
That's
was
the
he?
is that the Blue Grotto or whatever it is, the
No,
Blue Hole or something? What is that?
it's a grotto.
Yeah.
But we're going to find out why is it that he is brought to that particular site. There's also amazing history attached to that with the Knights Templar, and the Knights Templar we have to thank for the knowledge that they were able to acquire from Solomon's temple and get that out of Jerusalem and out of the hands of the Saracens when they went in and took over, the Muslims took over all of that area. The Templars are able to go in and do some underground tunneling for a period of time, and they come out with treasure. Is that treasure gold or is that treasure knowledge? We don't know, right? But there's a lot of speculation with that, and that goes into a whole another rabbit hole. But there is Knights Templar traditions attached to Malta as well as Tunisia. And then World War II.
Yeah, you were telling us
Malta.
about that. Oh my goodness, that was
What
so
an
fascinating.
amazing place. I mean, you could almost tie in the World War II, the outcome of World War II to what happened on Malta. So there's
Yeah,
some
the Germans basically and
Well,
the Italians were
they wanted
allied.
Malta because London,
Yeah.
England was controlling that island at that time,
Mhm.
and they wanted to. Of course, they're trying to
expand
their
Yeah.
their empire, and so you've got this little island. They've already got Italy. You've got
Yep.
the fascists that are involved in the war.
Mussolini
And so all they have on Malta to defend themselves are 3 airplanes from World War I that are named Faith, Hope, and Charity.
that was so.
And I have a neighbor who's actually making a movie about this story.
Oh, is that right?
And we'll be filming in Malta later this year. But it's an amazing story. I've read it, and it's incredible how with this old technology, because this is from World War I,
Yeah.
they are in these dogfights, and they're able to stave off and put off Mussolini's Air Force.
The Italian
And
Air
then
Force.
Hitler even comes over and steps in, and even he can't overcome. There's some protection. So this is what I'm getting at.
They've been able to maintain their own independence to this day.
Yeah, you have this island that is overcoming insurmountable odds to keep its sovereignty, and that was like a big win for England. Okay, and who knows what that could have perpetuated in the overall picture of the war.
Yeah.
But that little island, that's why we have to go there. We have to go and hear about.
We're going to
this
go
history.
exploring.
Yes, so Malta is big, even though it's a little island. And then the idea of going to the south of Italy is just totally
Italy is
relaxing.
just such a romantic, awesome place.
It is.
I mean,
It's relaxing.
Served my mission there in Milan and northern Italy. I never made it to southern Italy until I started hosting some of the tours with you.
Yes.
And I think, in fact, I think that was the first tour that I did was with you there in Italy, and we did northern Italy and southern Italy, but this southern Italy stuff is just fascinating.
It is. It is. We'll start in Naples and go to the old town of Naples, and so that's always anything that's old is going to attract me for sure because I love history. But the old town of Naples, and then we're going to
Herculaneum
Archaeological Park,
which when the first time we went to Pompeii, and
Pompeii,
it's a major tourist trap.
It is.
Yeah.
It's very famous. People have heard it, but
it's cool.
The same Mount Vesuvius was spreading its ashes and its lava everywhere, and so this Herculean.
And it's an archaeological preserve.
It's actually a better
really cool.
location to visit because people don't go there.
Yeah.
It's less known, and the site is got better preservation on the archaeological sites that's there. So we're going to head to that.
But you can't see the cool dog that was frozen in.
Yeah, we might not see that. Yeah. And then.
Which is at Pompeii.
From there, we'll go to we'll take a boat out to the Isle of Capri.
Capri, yeah.
And that is a beautiful island. The waters are clear blue, and we'll have a chance to go visit the Blue Grotto and go there.
Yeah.
And that happened to be the private swim area for the Emperor Tiberius.
Yeah.
Okay, so we're talking big time,
The same Tiberius that had the
beautiful.
city on the Sea
Yes,
of Galilee
right. It's named
when
after
we
the
were
same
there.
emperor. And um, I mean, wouldn't it be great to be emperor and just find all these beautiful spots in the world? Like, okay, I claim this
This is
cave
my pool.
for me, me only. Anyway, you get a chance to go into
Yeah.
this beautiful cave, and the reflection off of the water on the walls
Oh
is
wow.
gorgeous. And so, and then the Isle of Capri is full of these beautiful French, not, I want to say French, but Italian boutiques. So the shopping
Yeah.
is fun. The food
Oh my
is
gosh.
phenomenal.
If
Okay.
you haven't had Mediterranean food, seriously.
And when you go to the Isle of Capri, you'll just see these lemon trees everywhere. And that's where you get this idea of lemons being attached to Italy. It's just
Yeah.
olive, and it's in Sorrento as well. And I mean, they're known for their lemon. They have their lemon liqueur that comes from that area, but their lemon fragrances and all of that is all part of this Southern Italian
Yeah.
feel to it. So Sorrento is another. And again,
Yeah.
this is kind of our relaxation
Yeah.
tour, part of the tour.
To me, relaxation also involves food. And
Yes,
we used to have a saying on the mission there in Milan that Americans eat to live, but Italians live to eat.
there you go.
And they know how to make food.
So good.
It is so
Yes.
great. I mean, I've never had, and to this day, I still think that Italian food is the best. But basically, it's all part of the whole Mediterranean diet, basically, that they had there. And so going to these places and having into these little these mom and pop restaurants and so forth is so much fun to do
Yeah.
that.
No, it is. The eating is part of the cultural experience.
It
And
is. Yeah, it
it's
really is.
definitely that you're
Yeah.
going to have that opportunity in the southern part. And then from there, we are going to finish up our final days
Yeah.
in Rome. And that's it's iconic.
Yes.
And we actually take our guests to be able to have an endowment session at the temple.
Yeah, this one of the things I was just going to mention that, Kris, and that is that when we were kind of brainstorming for this tour, about what should we do, what would be something that would be unique that nobody's ever done before, and I really believe that I know that this particular tour has never been anything like it before, going into Tunisia and Malta, and then going over into southern Italy, and that includes it's very much an LDS oriented tour. As far as I mean, we have people who are not LDS come on our tours, like in Egypt and so forth. But this one is basically with the connections with the Mulekites and the Lehi's ocean voyage and the Phoenicians and all of that, and then also including the Knights Templar stuff that you are such an expert about, and things like these ley lines and so forth. I mean, how many people have heard of ley lines before? Really, people, let's come and tap Kris's brain.
There's
for
no better time to learn than today, 2025.
Yeah. When we were in Italy on that tour, my former mission president, Presidente Uvrard, was actually the director of the visitor center there, and the visitor center alone is worth going to see. It is just spectacular with the 12 disciples, basically, in stone, and then with Christ in the middle there, and it's just, oh my gosh, it's phenomenal. I can't wait to get over there and to share this experience with you. If you and hopefully there would be a lot of people who want to join us and do that.
Oh yeah.
And
if this is a tour for explorers, it really is.
It really
and
is.
People that love history and want to be able to kind of put pieces together from their different areas of historical research.
Kris has a really wonderful background in so many cool things, and I have my background in the Book of Mormon related things, and I think between the two of us, we cover a lot of bases on the tour. But we also have local. Almost everywhere we go, we're going to have local guides that are going to take us through and tell us that what their take is, and when you put it all together, I think it's going to be a really profound experience for everybody who comes with us on the tour.
I agree, and what I love is we can contrast when we go to the LDS temple we have a contrast because we can take you right over to the Sistine Chapel and the Vatican.
Yeah.
We leave Rome, we leave Italy, and go into a whole nother country. We got to add that we've got 4 countries we visit, right?
Yeah, that's
because
right.
we go to the
That's
Vatican,
right.
and that's
the
its
Vatican's
own
a separate country. Yeah.
And we go in there, and it's interesting to just see the contrast in the 2 different temple sites, so to speak, because you definitely could consider the Sistine Chapel a temple edifice.
Yeah.
In fact,
Well,
I believe
there's even kind of the state edifice would be,
Yeah.
which is the Colosseum, and what went on there. So there's so many kind of just fascinating what people felt were their places where they would go to. I mean, they weren't worshiping in the Colosseum, but they
No.
were worshiping their games, the
Well,
things that were most important to them.
their God, that became their God,
Their
that
God, yeah.
entertainment.
Entertainment. Being the Christians to the lions.
I've got to make sure, but I think from what I've read with Michelangelo, the reason the size of the Sistine Chapel is so big is it was designed to be able to fit Solomon's temple inside of it, the dimensions of Solomon's temple, and that's why it's
the exterior of Solomon's temple,
Yes.
the interior of that.
Yes, so massive, because it is. It's huge.
It is huge, yeah.
It is huge. And so, I was thinking it was kind of interesting because the last time I was in Italy with you, we decided to go to Mass at the Vatican,
Yeah.
right? On
And
that
Pope
Sunday.
came out
we
on
happened,
that balcony
and there's this huge Mass that's taking place that day. Like
yeah.
tons of people, and we're out on they had Jumbotron set up and huge security, and we didn't realize the Pope was going to be there, but they were doing a special Mass
what was that for?
Whit Sunday. It's for the Pentecost.
That's right.
It was Pentecostal Sunday.
That's
And I was so excited to actually be in a spot where they actually acknowledge and give a Mass or worship the idea of Pentecost, because it's kind of lost a little bit in it's in Acts 2, it's there, but it's not really, Hugh Nibley does a great essay on the 40-day period and the ascension, and he's got all that. But it was nice to be in a place. But I remember asking a friend, and I said, so is there going to be a different cardinal? She goes, that's the Pope. And I'm going, wow, brought to you by Legacy Tours and Travel.
No extra charge.
We even arranged for the Pope to join us. So
that's right.
So no guarantees in 2025 that's going to happen.
When you go exploring.
But that's what happens when you go exploring.
Because we weren't actually supposed to be going there, and then somebody had mentioned that they're going to have this big, Pentecost.
No,
thing.
We didn't even know that.
But we just happened to be going
just said,
past there.
We're going to go.
Wait a minute.
Let's go to Mass. Let's go there. And we, of course, we went to an LDS church up in Milan, which was amazing. Had a great, amazing
shout out to all my Milan friends.
Yeah, great spiritual experience up there. But that, again, the contrasting of 2 different types of worship is always interesting and fascinating to watch. And anyway, so
I can hardly wait to get going on this tour. It's going to be fantastic.
Yes. Yeah, so of course we're going to be able to see the iconic Rome sites of the Trevi Fountain and Spanish Steps,
and even the Pantheon.
Yes, and the Pantheon. Yeah,
Pantheon. That
and
is
we take you inside
too.
because now that has been shut off since COVID. It's not just open to the public. You actually have to have tour tickets to get in. So we are going
on an official tour.
We're going to go actually inside the Pantheon, which is an amazing edifice.
Which we did the first time, but the last time we were there, they was shut off. You couldn't go in unless you had tour tickets. You had to get them like several days in advance, and we didn't realize that had happened. So, it's always an adventure.
It is
to go with us on these tours. But we're excited about when you're going to be actually going to the. One of the things that I loved was going to where Paul was imprisoned.
Oh right,
and
that's the maritime.
The
Maritime prison.
Maritime prison, yes.
Yeah, Maritime prison, yeah.
Yep. And,
so there's some Paul history that we, of course, overlap with. And then I definitely are going to pull in some Dante and some other traditional Hermetic
Yeah.
history that is fascinating, that is tied into, again, people that didn't believe and follow the dictum of the Catholic Church. They'd have to go into hiding and kind of, Michelangelo is one. They couldn't be open about their beliefs or they would have been killed,
Yep.
because that happened with the Cathars. You couldn't go against what the Catholic Church wanted you to believe.
Which is surprising
Okay.
that actually, because I'll never forget walking into the cathedral, the main cathedral there in Florence, and seeing the tomb of Michelangelo.
hmm
And who was the other? There was another one that was there.
Galileo is in, though.
Yeah.
Yeah. And see,
Yeah.
he was
Galileo
forced.
Galilei. Yeah.
He had to renege on something. Then he
He had
recanted
his problems
that.
with the church too.
Yeah, exactly, because they were in control of the narrative. Even with science, they had to have
Yep.
their say on what they felt science should be talking about.
Yes.
I mean, it was total control, I would call it tyranny, and that is why people wanted to come to the New World.
Man, it's amazing. They were woke even back then.
Yeah, yeah.
Shutting down if the narrative, if they don't like it, they're going to shut it down.
Yeah. So there's
Anyway,
really, I'm excited about this. This is going to be a fun exploration
be
with
great.
you and learning more about Tunisia and Malta.
Well, I've been wanting to take a tour with you, and I actually was hoping to go with you and John Hall, basically to go back and
Dr.
really
Hall.
kind of go into the Knights Templar stuff there in Portugal and UK and these other France and so forth, where you guys have gone. So it's something that I think is just fascinating.
Yeah, it is.
And kind of following that whole posterity of Christ idea.
Yeah,
Which
well,
a lot of people don't even know about.
Yeah, I'm going to
Sometimes
Portugal
I get
in April.
I get kind of blank stares a lot of times. What are you talking about?
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
there's
a lot. Honestly, if people just decided to explore and figure history out and what we've learned and what has been hidden from us in history and the annals of it, because we have to understand that history is written by those that win.
Conquerors.
The conquerors. And so they put their narrative down, and it usually makes them look really good, and then the other people are painted really bad. And then they hope that we will buy into that narrative as we move forward. And so
you see examples of that when we went to Egypt together, and basically all of the big monumental what do you call that? Not the
pyramids?
Not the Sphinx, but the tall obelisks.
Oh, the obelisks, yes.
And how one pharaoh would be reigning for a certain period of time, and when he was overthrown or something like that, the first thing they do is go on all the obelisks and basically carve out their initials or carve out the old pharaoh and carve in the new.
Yeah.
So changing the history. That's why history is so important. That's why Laban had to die in the Book of Mormon, because without the brass plates, it's like the Lord said, the people would just, they wouldn't know their history, and they would perish.
Yeah.
Because of that. I think what was the actual term? He said that they would better that one man should perish than that people should
dwindle in
unbelief, because they didn't have the history.
Right.
So changing the history is a big deal.
It is.
And learning the history is the only way that you can really learn how to avoid the catastrophic things that happened in the past.
And all of this comes down to the idea that there's only one person that we can glean from to know truth, and that's Jesus Christ, our Savior, because he is omnipotent. He knows past, present, and future, and he's the only one that knows what has actually happened.
Yeah.
And so we always have to get our own confirmation from him. Even anything that I might say, that you might say, we always have to take it to the real source of truth, which is our Savior.
Yeah.
And we make sure he's part of what we're doing when we're on these tours, because honestly, I've had so many amazing experiences happen that are just like a gem that God has given me, or that the Savior has provided on some of my tours, that I welcome him, because he adds to what we create. I mean, we might create an itinerary, and then all of a sudden, Jesus, or the Holy Spirit will say, you're going to be at the Vatican. maybe we can pull the Pope in on the same day at the same time. I mean, those are the kind of things. And I'm not saying that we go to worship the Pope, but it's just
Yeah.
that iconic figure that's attached to that church. And not everyone gets an opportunity to see that person or to hear them
In
in person.
the and in the
In
place where
in the
they
place
are
where
known to be.
he is
Yes.
known to be,
Yeah.
in his little country
Yeah.
that he's
Right there.
that he's the king of, or the
Yeah.
Pope of, or
Yeah, the
whatever
Pope
they
of,
call
yeah.
him, But anyway, I'm really
Yeah.
looking forward to it. October can't come soon enough. And
Gonna be fun.
yeah, I'm excited
Well,
about the
I
people.
really hope that those who come with us will be have the same kind of exploration attitude and let's
Yes.
go let's go
This
check it
is
out. I will have to say this though, and that is that anybody who's been on my tours previously knows it's kind of more like boot camp than it is a vacation. And this is going to be a little more towards the
this will be
vacation, but a learning vacation.
yeah. You'll be
Yeah.
learning, and we're going to give you some downtime in
Yeah.
not downtime, meaning we're going to be more of a absorbing the culture.
Yes.
Okay, instead of learning as much, but definitely absorbing the culture in the southern part of Italy is going to be
Oh my
phenomenal.
goodness! It's
Yeah,
always it's so.
I can't wait.
Italy is just we just love it.
Yeah.
I love Italians and Italy in general, and it's just a really fascinating. But anyway,
Join us, Legacy
yes.
Tours and Travel, and we will have an amazing time in Tunisia, Malta, and Italy.
That's right. Gonna have a time. Come and join us. It's gonna be a great time, and we will go. If you want to get in touch with us, you go to Legacy Tours and Travel. It's actually now seating is limited. The tour only can get so big, and then we have to shut it down. So once it gets to that point, then basically you're out. So if you'd like to go, you need to make the reservations as soon as possible.
Get your deposits in.
Get your deposits and so forth in, so that you can make sure that you can go with us. But come on, we're going to have a good time, have an adventure together.